The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shepnaz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today. And we have the pleasure of having in here with us today Pastor Zack Zaborski.
Hey.
Everyone cheers.
That's when the booze come in.
No. So Pastor Zack got to kind of take a little bit different angle of what he normally does on Sunday mornings. Mm-hmm. And he got to bring us the message. And so we're going to spend today and tomorrow kind of talking about his message and breaking it down and just chit-chatting about life, and hope that you enjoy that. So, Zack, welcome in.
Thanks, brother. Happy to be here.
So yesterday was a little different. Not the first time that we've seen you preach, but, you know, most of the time you're got a guitar in your hand or something.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how your week was different this past week then, as preparing to preach instead of preparing to sing.
Yeah, it's so funny when Rob asked me the first time and this time, it's, you know, in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, it's fine. I just kind of shift gears and, you know, I'll just do it a little different. And I'm always completely drastically wrong with like, oh, it's going to be fine. Because the difficulty of doing it is I'm still preparing to help the band with worship songs and practices, and if we're using tracks and all that, getting lyrics in. And
so the other stuff doesn't go completely away.
Not necessarily.
Because even though it might just look like it, you don't just pop up there on Sunday and sing a song.
Right, exactly. Believe it or not, there's a little more to it. So yeah, it was really interesting trying to, like, I don't know if compartmentalize is the right word, but to totally shift gears in the moment. Like, okay, right now I need to make sure the band's getting ready, but knowing that, oh man, I really have to start digging in. And, you know, because for me, this is so out of my wheelhouse as far as like preparing a sermon. It's just not what I'm used to doing on a weekly basis. And I don't have like a flow on how to do it well and quickly. And so that makes me nervous. And so I want to over prepare. But then trying to find the time to do that is always interesting. Like, I'm going to read the story of Hosea 75 times right now to get it in my head. So it's interesting. It stretched me a lot, but yeah, it was definitely a unique week, and being here for rehearsal out in the congregation seats and listening. And even on Sunday morning, I think I kept having these like panic attack moments when the countdown started, because I've been cutting it close running up on stage a couple times.
You're welcome. I know I've been the instigator of several of those attacks.
Well, if it wasn't for you, I probably would have messed up a lot more. So thank you. But yeah, knowing that countdown, like, oh no, the worship team's got this. Like, I'm serving a different role this morning. So that was really interesting. But man, we are, and I want to say this, like, we are so blessed at this church to have the worship team that we have. Sure. And the worship leaders, like Joshua led worship this weekend, and he did a phenomenal job. And we have a team that's not just talented enough to pull it off, but their hearts are in the right place too. Yeah. So I got to sit back and just worship. I didn't have to worry about, okay, is the band on task? You know, like, are we following the click track correctly? Are lyrics right? It's like, nope, I just get to sit back and trust our team to do what they do. And so that's awesome.
A nice place to be.
Very much so.
So yeah, you got that. Now, you may have had some observations as like being sitting out there like, oh, that's what this sounds like out here.
Yeah, very different. Very different. Yeah, because if people heard what I have in my headphones, they'd be like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was really nice to just sit back and worship, like, to not have to stress or worry about it and just soak in the presence of God as I was mentally and spiritually preparing to share the word of God, which is, you know, something I don't want to take lightly. It's an important role. So yeah, I don't know how Rob does it on a weekly basis, man, but it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know, God has gifted him, that's for sure.
Yes, he has.
He does a great job of being able to shift gears and compartmentalize, and he gets this thing done and he gets that thing going. And if he hadn't been a pastor, I think I see these old videos from like the 50s and 60s when they'd have variety shows and somebody would sit there and start spinning plates on sticks.
Right.
And have like 10 or 15 of them going and keep them going. That would be Rob if he wasn't
100%.
our pastor.
100%.
So, the title of the message you sent me earlier in the week was Beautiful Things in Ugly Places.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this title and kind of how God pulled you into this direction of like, hey, this is the message I want you to share.
Yeah. So I had read the story of Hosea and Gomer a long time ago, and it was just so, like, it wrecked me. It just absolutely wrecked me in so many different levels. And like, yes, it's this beautiful story of redemption and love. But the more you dig into it and the more you look at it, it's like what the beauty that happened in it happened in the most nonsensical, weird, gross kind of way. If you think about it, like, when all the moments leading up to the prophecy, it's like, it was yucky stuff. It wasn't just this beautiful little thing. Like, he was in the middle of a brothel. Well,
and because of that, this is not normally a story you hear a lot in Sunday school when you're growing up.
Yeah, I tried to make it as kid-friendly as possible, not knowing, grateful for children's ministry to take the children out of the room for this. But
100%. But you said that, like, the Lord had worked in you before on this particular message.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't aware, this story is told in the book of Hosea, which is in the Old Testament. And tell us, just give us some context, a little bit of background of kind of what's going on in this story.
Yeah. So Hosea is a prophet, and there had been a bunch of prophets before Jesus' time, right? And I touched on this in the sermon that, like, all these prophets had some pretty cool roles. Like, their calling and what God had asked them to do on paper was cool. Like, it made sense. Like, okay, I'm going to go do what God has called me to do. And so I picture Hosea, like, excited about that. Like, all right, I'm a prophet of God. And at the time in Israel where he was at, it was like the northern region of Israel. Like, he was a known person. It wasn't just like this random guy. Like, he had a reputation, right? And a good reputation.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine, like, okay, I've built my name up. I'm reputable in my community, and now it's my time. And then God speaks to him, and he's like, oh, okay, are you ready for your mission? Because I got it for you. And it's like, yes, what is it? Go marry a prostitute. It's like, I can imagine just like the jaw drop. Wait, what? No, I didn't hear you right. Say that again. Kind of moment. But being the good prophet of God that he was obedient. And Israel actually at the time was like doing pretty well on the surface, right? Like, they were prosperous and they were in a time of peace. Like, there was no war and craziness going on. Like, it was just good. It was a good time for them. But because of that, they started kind of falling into some of the more worldly comforts, if you will. Like, we had kind of hit on it, like their view of love, which was really like the theme of this whole sermon.
Right.
Their view of love was so skewed and so messed up. And little did Hosea know at the time that God was going to use this wacky, gross, nonsensical mission to really teach them what true love looked like.
The first week of May is our district assembly, which meets at Grove City Naz Church on May 2nd through the 5th. If you're interested in learning what goes on there, you are welcome to attend. They will kick off with an ordination service on May 2nd for those who have completed all the education and the many steps required to be part of the ordained clergy in the Church of the Nazarene. Our very own Kathy Burgess will be ordained that evening, and you are invited to attend that service and help her celebrate that accomplishment and pray for her future. May 12th is Mother's Day, and you will have an opportunity for child dedication that day. Child dedication gives families a chance to commit to raising their child in the Christian faith. Let us know if you're interested. There will also be an opportunity to take a photo in the lobby for your favorite lady that day, your mom. So bring your mom to church that day.
So God tells him, I need you to go marry a prostitute. and he's going to be obedient. So what happens? I mean, who does he find? And,
Yes.
and how did they set up a regular house and have life? What happened with
Yeah, so as you can imagine, to find a prostitute to marry, you have to go to where prostitutes are. And most of the time, that's not the most cleanly or reputable places for people, especially people of God, prophets, called by the Lord to go. And so he had to go into those places, the red light district of Israel, if you will, to find his wife, Gomer, which it just cracks me up. Like, I don't know why it makes me chuckle that bad, and I feel bad for anybody else named Gomer out there.
Well,
but
I know we have a lot of loyal listeners. I don't know that any of them are named Gomer, but
well, if you are, no offense. It's just a bummer of a name to me. It's just kind of like, oh, well, your name's Gomer. So he has to marry a prostitute and has to marry one named Gomer.
Nice.
It's just crazy. But so he does find her. They do get married. They have an actual marriage.
Yeah.
Husband and wife, and they start a family, have 3 kids together. They have a home. Like, it seems like things are going good. And that kind of makes me question too, like, I wonder what was going through Hosea's mind. Like, okay, so I did what you told me to do.
Right. What was the point of this?
Yeah, now what?
Was the end goal just to have me marry a prostitute?
Yeah, right.
Or
Like, what is this teaching?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, they had a good life together. I mean, as far as we knew it, they had 3 kids and a home and a beautiful life together until one day when she was just gone. I was explaining it on Sunday morning. Like, I can't imagine like just waking up and your wife's just not there, with no note left behind, no like warning, just she wasn't there, and like searching your whole house for your wife.
Yeah, as you were playing that out in the message, it really hit me, like when you said he's probably going into the bedrooms and like, hey kids, have you seen your mom?
Yeah.
Like, where is she? And maybe in his mind he was like, well, maybe she went out to go get some bread or something, and you kind of wait and see, and then realize as time progresses, your mom's not coming home.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's one of the interesting things too, as I was studying. It's like, I didn't find anything. And if there is something out there, please send it my way. But there was no like timeline of like, how long was she gone? I mean, when was the light bulb moment for Hosea that like, she's not just running to the store, like she's just not coming back, which would lead to so many more questions. Like, okay, God, I did what you asked me to do. I married her. I started a family with her, and now she's not coming home. And then, like, where do you go from there? I would love to know the timeline, because it was like, how long before God spoke to him again? Was he just sitting, waiting, pacing the floor?
Well, sometimes I think it's easy for us when we're reading a Bible story and we can just flip the page and see what's going to happen next. But when we look at the lives of somebody like Moses, who he was 40 years old before he heard something. And then when that happened, then it was another 40 years before he says, okay, this is what you're going to do now.
Yep.
And in that time of waiting may have only been a flip of the page in the Bible, but they were living life during that time. And, we find ourselves, I think, many times in between those page flips where we're like, okay, God told me, he gave me a vision, he gave me a dream, he gave me some passions, he gave me some abilities, maybe when I was in my early 20s, and here I am in my mid-30s, and I'm wondering, was that all for naught?
Yeah.
So God re-intervenes?
Yeah.
What happens?
He re-intervenes, and he talks to Hosea again, and he says, go and find her. So it's like, okay, well, that raises some more questions. The more I got thinking about it, and he went from being married, nice family, to now single dad. He's got 3 kids to take care of. And the Lord says, okay, now go find her. I'm like, okay, where'd the kids go? Like, it raised so many questions for me, especially as a parent. I'm like, all right, I got to go find your mom, and you guys got to stay behind. But again, he obeys. And there's so many questions like, but God, she left me. Like, I got to go find her? Like, wouldn't you just bring her back to me? Like, no, go find her. And so he goes. Again, he's an obedient person. He's a prophet of God who obeys his voice. And so he goes and he looks for her. And I said this on Sunday too, but it was like, I wonder when the light bulb went off in his head. I was like, okay, where do I start? Do I go to the marketplace? Do I go wherever? And it's like, okay, well, where, if I was Gomer, where would I be? Oh, wait.
Right.
Where did I find her in the first place?
Yeah.
I got to go back to that place that I already didn't want to go the first time. And now this man of God has to step back into the muck, the mire, the dirty, the red light district, like a place that a man of God should not be going to find his wife, right? But he does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we're going to leave a little bit of a cliffhanger there as we're going to go in for tomorrow. But I just want to, for today, let's kind of wrap with taking a look at this twisted view of love that Israel had. 3 things that you mentioned is that they thought love could be purchased. They thought that love was about self-gratification, and they thought that you could actually have love with inanimate objects. Yeah. And certainly if you want to speak to any of those, but I was thinking as we were just getting ready to record how those 3 things really speak to how our society today looks at love. Yeah. When I'm looking at it can be purchased, we think that we can buy our love, that maybe I don't spend enough time with my kids, but if I just buy them the latest technology and the latest toys or whatever, somehow that will suffice as love. Or maybe self-gratification. I can get things for myself. I can get things, that will make my life better, and I can check off the list that I'm doing better than what the neighbors are. Yeah. And even the inanimate objects, when I first thought of that, I was like, do we do that? And I'm like, I look down at my phone. Right. I'm like, yeah, we do that. Yep. So
every Apple product I have in my pocket, on my watch, computer sitting in front of me, it's easy for us to fall into that and not even realize it. And I think when I look at this story in particular, Israel was in a prosperous place. Like financially they were doing well. And I think that tied into a lot of what we see here is, because there was money to be spent, because they were doing well, they could go buy things that made them feel good and called that love. Whether that's a person like Gomer and her occupation, or is it, in our terms, the car or the buggy back, whatever it was. It's like the newest, the best.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, we're going to leave it there, and definitely we want you to join back with us tomorrow as we're going to go into this story a little deeper. There was a reason that God sent him on a mission in the first place, and tomorrow we're really going to get into that reason and what he learns and what he's able to show the people of Israel. So we just encourage you to follow along with everything that's going on at the church by going to shepnaz.org. Also check out everything that we have on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. There's some devotional guides at shepnaz.org/media. For Pastor Zach, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.